Hello, in this podcast on the ozone hole, our learning targets are to explain why ozone is being depleted and to explain how the international community is cooperating to fix this problem. First of all, what is the ozone layer? No, the ozone layer does not come from your smelly socks. Ozone is a form of oxygen. Ozone is an oxygen molecule with 3 oxygen atoms, O3. The oxygen that you breathe is O2. That's oxygen made of 2 oxygen atoms. So is ozone good for us or is ozone bad for us? Well, it depends. It depends on 3 things: location, location, and location. In earlier Vodcast, we learned about smog. Smog is an example of bad ozone. This ozone can damage your lungs, can damage plants and buildings. This is known as tropospheric ozone, and in this location, ozone is bad. The ozone layer is found in the stratosphere, and here ozone is good for us. Here ozone absorbs ultraviolet radiation. And this is how it does it. Ultraviolet radiation reacts with oxygen, and it creates 2 oxygen radicals, 2 single oxygen atoms. One of those oxygen radicals combines with an oxygen molecule to make ozone. At around the same time, the ultraviolet radiation will split an ozone molecule into a diatomic oxygen, or O2, and an oxygen radical. So here we have 2 ultraviolet photons being absorbed by oxygen. Those are 2 ultraviolet photons that don't make it to the surface of the Earth. Now, why is UV or ultraviolet radiation bad for us? Because of skin cancer. And here are some signs of skin cancer. It can cause cataracts. And the top one, you see a normal eye. And the bottom one, you see an eye with cataracts. The cataracts will interfere with your vision. So now we come to how we've harmed the ozone layer. Our cars have harmed it. Our spray bottles have harmed it. Our air conditioners have harmed it. Our refrigerators have harmed it. Also, not just the spray bottles, but inside that spray bottle is the type of thing that's used to clean electronics. Because all those things contained chlorofluorocarbons, or CFCs. And the brand name of CFCs is Freon. Same thing. Just like ibuprofen is the real name, and Advil and Motrin are the brand names. These CFCs get released usually when they're disposed of, or in the case of spray bottles sprayed, they float up to the ozone layer where they act like a catalyst. Each of these 3 chlorine atoms in the chlorofluorocarbons can destroy 100,000 ozone molecules before they themselves are used up in a separate reaction. We no longer make things with CFCs, so all your spray bottles are CFC free, all the new air conditioners, refrigerators, everything like that, CFC free. And we'll see why later in the podcast. Other ozone-depleting chemicals are halogens and hydrobromofluorocarbons. These are used in fire extinguishers, and they're also addressed in the legislation. Methyl bromide are pesticides used in fire extinguishers and for electrical fires, and they're much more destructive than CFCs. Chemical formulas. This is how the chlorine in these compounds, in the CFCs, destroy the ozone. The chlorine combines with the ozone to make ClO and O2. And then the ClO combines with an oxygen radical to make Cl and O2. And you see how the Cl at the beginning is the same as Cl at the end. That's why it is a catalyst. A catalyst is something that helps a reaction to occur. It facilitates a reaction, but it itself is not changed by a reaction. So that chlorine is free to go out and attach to another ozone molecule and destroy it. So what's with the ozone hole? Here is the ozone hole. The color that you see there, that's basically a graph showing the amount of ozone in something called Dobson units. That hole there is basically covering the whole continent of Antarctica. That whole area, the ozone layer is greatly diminished. The ozone hole all has to do with polar stratospheric clouds. Here's a picture of one. Oops, I'm sorry. That's a polar stratospheric cloud. Here is a polar stratospheric cloud. These are clouds that appear in the stratosphere. The clouds that we see around here are all in the troposphere. So these are very, very high clouds. Now, why are these a problem? Well, they occur when it's really, really cold over Antarctica. And that occurs in the winter and in the spring. The sunlight and the clouds and the CFCs destroy lots and lots of ozone, or oodles and oodles of ozone. So this occurs in the spring, and that would be when the sun is out. So that would be in our fall. So that would be September and October. So the clouds act like an additional catalyst. And that creates the hole, which would be in October. And then when the hole breaks up in late spring, November and December, that ozone pore air spreads north to South America and Australia, where it can cause lots of problems there. Like sheep which are grazing in New Zealand or in Australia or Argentina, a lot of them end up with having cataracts. So what's been done? Well, this was first discovered in 1984 when a scientist went down to Antarctica and he discovered the ozone amounts were very, very low. Everyone was surprised the satellites hadn't picked it up, but what happened is that the people monitoring the satellites thought those low numbers were a mistake, so they've been ignoring the data. And then this was confirmed by looking back at the satellite data where they thought it was a mistake and they realized it wasn't. And then in 1987, international treaty was signed by 24 nations, and they all agreed to cut back CFC production by half by the year 2000. Then before it went into effect, International Panel announced that worldwide ozone levels had fallen. And then 2 weeks after that, DuPont, which was a major producer of CFCs, announced that it was supporting a ban on CFCs. And prior to that announcement, it was very much against that ban. But then a couple years later, new data came out showing that things were even worse than they thought they were. So in 1990, they came up with a new amendment, which this was signed by 93 nations, and it called for the elimination of CFCs by 2000 if substitutes are available by then, and other ozone-depleting chemicals would be phased out. But then new data came in showing things were even worse. Like in 1992, record high CLO levels were measured over New England and Canada, and that stoked fears about the formation of an Arctic ozone hole. So that brought about the Copenhagen Protocol. This was signed by 191 countries, and that moved the phase-out date up to January 1st, 1996. Pollution has mostly stopped. So why is there still an ozone hole over Antarctica? Well, chlorine is still a catalyst, and it's still up there. And it will remain up there until it forms other compounds. The CO levels will slowly go down, but it will take a while. Here's some final thoughts. The CFC and ozone layer story is a shining example of international cooperation fixing an environmental problem that we ourselves have caused. Now, the CFC concentrations are declining, and the pre-1980 levels will be achieved between the years 2050 and 2100. Full recovery will occur between 2100 and 2200. During this time, more UV will be reaching the surface, and people will develop skin cancer because of that. However, the EPA does estimate that the Copenhagen protocols will, over this course of time, save 295 million people from dying of skin cancer. Additionally, the CFCs are greenhouse gases, and their eventual decline will help us combat climate change, and in a sense they already have, because since we've phased them out and we're using them so much, since we haven't produced and released them in this time since 1996, production since 1987, that's a lot of greenhouse gases which we have not released. Now we come to our concluding questions. Number 1, why is UV radiation a problem? Number 2, how does ozone help us? Number 3, where is the ozone layer? Number 4, why is there an ozone hole? Number 5, what treaty bans the production of CFCs? And that concludes this Vodcast, and I'll see you in class tomorrow.